It's Wednesday, June 5th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. What do you want to feel when you look at your photos? Project Powerback helps folks who are queer, trans, or have an otherwise underrepresented body or identity and want their photo taken. Today on the show, we speak with folks about why projects like this one are so meaningful. And here's the underlying point for today's conversation about the projects that we're going to talk about the work that's being done, because it's about building collective community care for folks to feel heard and seen and represented for who they are, because that matters. That matters to everyone. And it's a big part of the conversations we always have for community connection and using a lens of empathy here on The Signal. If you've got thoughts for us today, thesignal@cbc.ca. You can call the Signal line and leave a message, or if you want to dart us to text 709-5. Oh, that's the Signal line number. The text line 709-327-8206. We've got some folks here in studio. We're going to make a couple calls later on too, but we've got Tanya Heath, who is a photographer and with Project Powerback. We've got Allie Pike, who's a stylist, and Emin Hayden, who is also a natural texture specialist and hairstylist, right? Excellent. Welcome to the studio. How y'all doing?
Thanks.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Talk to us about Project Powerback.
Okay. That's why I'm here, right? Project Powerback. Kind of a long time coming. As you said, I'm a photographer. The journey has been interesting. Project Powerback was kind of born, I guess, or I kind of transitioned to like a new focus with my photography a couple years ago, 2022. And Project Powerback just aims to kind of serve as a service, I guess, or a space for folks, mostly queer or trans, or people in otherwise underrepresented bodies or identities, to, just have a safe space to have photo shoot experiences where they can really see themselves how they want to see themselves, and really think about how they want to feel when they look at the photos that they get at the end of the shoot.
So that's the jumping off point. So whether it's about photography or styling, right? Mm-hmm. What about for both of you, for what you do, and why, like, that point for safe space and folks feeling seen and heard, why is that so important? Emin?
I think that traditionally salons and barbershops have kind of centered around being more feminine or masculine, just following more strict binaries. And I think that being in a community space like the Quad or a mall or even at Eastern Edge in the gallery, it just kind of opens that door to create a different venue for people to get the confidence to walk in and say, yeah, I want this haircut.
Yeah, for gender-free hairstyling.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Traditionally, also in salons, there's often a lot of barriers that even as a stylist of 18 years, I didn't really think about a lot until I started to come out of the salon and start to serve people in different community spaces like Emin was talking about, that even just to come into the salon sometimes is a barrier for folks. If you don't see yourself in a specific space, if you don't see yourself represented, then it's very hard to walk into that space with confidence, and especially to talk about who you are or how you want to be represented when you walk into that space. So I think, going into these community centers and these events, people they already feel the safety of the space because they see themselves in the space. And so therefore they're more open to conversation about who they are. And once you start talking about who you are as a stylist, I feel like they're the cues for me. Like when people talk about, about something they like about their hair or something about themselves, like all of a sudden we start to watch them light up in certain scenarios or shy away in other things. And that's really the clues. It's a lot less about the words, but really like watching people, connecting with them. And I think that's how like you really represent them through hair, represent their identity through hair, and then also, going back to what Tanya does, then to be able to capture that. So I think that's like the biggest thing is feeling seen in the space and feeling safe in the space.
Yeah, because if you look at a space and you're like, oh, that's not me. That can be such a scary thing.
For sure.
It's such an intimidating thing then with anxiety and everything else,
Yeah.
right? So when it's something because getting your hair styled or any type of any type of styling or photography, it can be such an intimate thing. Like people talk about their hairstylist or their barber as like almost like a counselor sometimes or a therapist. So if you've got that dynamic inside, but you don't feel comfortable there, how can you ever get to that?
Absolutely.
Tell us more about yourself. You said 18 years, eh?
Yes.
Wow.
So I'm a stylist of 18 years. I started in the industry because I wanted to help people express themselves through hair. Hair was always a big piece of expression for me. And I was very fortunate to just connect with people that I sat in their chair and felt very safe a lot of the time. And so that's why I joined the industry. That's why I started doing hair. Soon after, found out very quickly that the beauty industry is a lot more about like policing bodies and really like the idea of assimilating and like that there are certain beauty ideals or certain ideas the industry like pushes upon us. And as stylists, like even if that's not our beliefs, it's very easy to fall into the trap of just kind of regurgitating, just pushing like what you've been taught in school because it's the knowledge you attain through education. So therefore, you're doing it in your chair. And sometimes, unless you're really stepping back and like critically thinking about it, you are putting these things onto others unintentionally. So for me, it was a journey. I worked in a lot of great spaces, and I was very fortunate that I've always been of the mind, like, if it doesn't seem like it's working, then I'm like ready to move on and look for something new. So I worked in a few different places. I've moved. 6 years ago, I began working with the Seahorse Salon that was pioneering safer salon spaces in St. John's. And through them, I definitely found safety in expressing myself more and putting myself more out there. And the moment that started to happen, I started to attract more people in my chair that I was able to kind of open the conversations I wanted to. And I was starting to, my work was aligning more with how I wanted to work. And that took a long time. You know, I said I've been 18 years. That was 6 years ago. But there was something in me that through that like decade of work, I just felt like every time that I thought maybe this isn't it, maybe I need to be doing something else, there'd be a glimmer. I'd meet somebody, I'd be in a space, I'd have a client. It would be a connection. I would feel the alignment, and I knew, okay, I'm on the right journey. I just need to kind of keep going. So for me, the safety of expressing myself led to such an expansion in my career and finding those people and then connecting with those people in collaborative work. So that's, I don't know how long ago it was, a number of years ago when I met Tanya. It actually kind of came again through community. I was working with Quadrangle. We were doing a pop-up, and it was a fundraiser for Quadrangle. I was looking for a videographer, someone that I had grown up with, works in film, Jamie Miller, and they put me on to Lex Ambrose, and Lex is Tanya's partner. Lex shot the film, small kind of promo for this. I wanted to really just like highlight Quadrangle, what they were about. I didn't know what they were about. I didn't know it was like a queer community center in St. John's. They'd already been on the go for almost a decade, and like I had no idea because they didn't have a space, and they were really like I think underheard from in media and a lot of different things. So when I connected with Lex to be able to do this, connected with Tanya, saw what they were doing with Project Powerback, which I think was like still fairly like new at the time, and it has really grown when you see the people in your chair. All of a sudden, the people who I started collaborating with, those people were then in their spaces. All of a sudden, they were having their pictures done with Tanya. I was seeing them do community work with Lex, and then Emin and I actually met through the Seahorse Salon, and we immediately connected. Our love of community and the way that we thought about hair, the way we thought about the work we wanted to do aligned so well. So when I had the ideas of doing pop-ups, he was like immediately on board. And through that, his creative lens and lived experience, we've been able to like really grow pop-ups, community events, and it has become something that, we're seeing a lot of the same same people coming, which is beautiful, and then all of a sudden that's growing. And every time we do a pop-up, I just see more people being involved, and it's really growing, like the community care aspect of it. Yeah.
It's great seeing the evolution and development of Quadrangle
Yes,
over the years.
absolutely.
It is so nice to see, and all the work that went into getting there, because
Yes.
there's so much of it.
So much work.
And what about yourself? Tell us about your backstory.
So I've been doing hair for over 3 years now. When I was in hair school, I initially kind of realized that they, like Ali said, were enforcing a certain type of beauty standard, something that I didn't necessarily agree with, but I kind of knew that I had to stick through the education side of it to build that foundational skill. Then on the other end, it kind of opened up this lens for me of what was missing. And that was a space where even I felt comfortable walking into. So through that, I discovered the Seahorse. They were probably one of the first salons in town to actually have gender neutral pricing, which is like in and of itself a huge thing. It's so small, but to just have that barrier of a man's cut versus a woman's cut, I mean, you're pink taxing women in a women-dominated industry. There's just no way around it. So on that side of it, I was like, okay, there's some little nuances here that I'm kind of picking up that I think we could challenge a little bit.
Yeah, so gender neutral prices, gender neutral haircuts. And can you explain pink taxing a bit for me?
It's essentially just a tax that we unnecessarily put on women because it's a luxury service. A lot of people consider it to be.
The extra bump on the cost of what folks might think the cost of beauty is, because, like you said, it's a luxury service. So it's like, so if we have a gender neutral price, it could be like whatever, right? But actually, let's put an extra $30 on this.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at something as simple as razors. I mean, you can get the same Gillette razor in blue for $2 cheaper than the one in pink.
I did not know that.
Oh, absolutely. It is very wide-reaching.
For the color.
For the color.
For the color. And who it's marketed to.
Absolutely. And I realized that pretty young, like, okay, you're getting the same thing, but it's pink and we're paying $10 more. I don't understand that. So it reaches into how we push people in our chair to look as well.
Yeah.
And that kind of idea that they feed into.
Tanya, tell us a bit more about your journey for all of this, and then we can connect everyone together.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, the common thread I'm seeing here so far, which kind of really speaks to my story as well, is something's missing. What is it? And I think it's those type of questions that has kind of brought my photography project to where it is today. And I think that kind of connects us all and really speaks to the community aspect of why we do things. Because, what's missing? It's that community aspect and building community and building relationships and building safer spaces and that the care that goes into building those types of spaces. But to your question, so my kind of personal journey and my personal life story, I guess you could say, like really runs parallel to my photography journey, I think, in a way. So I'm 34. I came out as queer when I was 30. So that's a long time in my life, kind of living a certain way and not really questioning why I'm living that way or really digging deep into those questions or who I am and what do all these things mean to me. And I think that's kind of what I was doing with photography for a long time too. I picked up a camera when I lived in Toronto in 2016. And that was just because I needed something to get me out of a sad space I was in at that time and to get me out of the house and something to be excited about, which was great. And it did just that. But then I, found myself with a really nice camera and I felt, what do people with nice cameras do? Oh, they take pictures of people for money. Like this could be a side gig. And I kind of didn't question it. I just kind of went with it. This is I have a nice camera. This is what I do with a nice camera, right?
It's the tide, well, you didn't say tide, Allie, but just the forces of pushing you in one direction until you realize, wait a minute, That just because this is how things kind of are pushing everyone,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that I have to be this way.
Yeah, which I think is literally the metaphor for my life. Like, you know what I mean? Like 30 years I was living a certain way because like like we live in a society that pushes us in a certain way. You know what I mean? Which is like a very cis heterosexual life. You know what I mean? Without asking, if you don't ask yourself questions, like how do you get to the other side, I guess. Anyways, long story short, there was a period of time where I did start asking those questions when the pandemic hit, honestly. So 2020, I started asking myself those questions. And I realized, oh, okay, cool, I'm queer. I came out pretty quickly after that. And that's really when I started coming into my true self, because I gave myself the space, and the queer community gave myself the space to really dig deep into like, who am I? Why do I do the things I do? Is it because I want to do it, or is it because I'm being pushed, or it's like, you know, the things that are expected of us in society, the rigid like boxes we're put in, things like that. So once I started exploring those and really digging for those answers and finding out those answers for myself, that's kind of when my photography stuff changed too. And that really was pushed along too with just being challenged by my partner in the best way possible. So Lex, as Ali mentioned, they're so, I admire them so much. Because they really, I think, were a catalyst to get my photography where it was today. They really like challenged me. I'm like, why are you doing this? How can you make this something that really means something to you and to other people? And, you know, photograph what moves you. You know what I mean? And what moves me is working with community, whether that's, you know, taking portraits or headshots of queer and trans people, or like we said, other people in marginalized bodies or identities, or, you know, attending protests and rallies and marches and showing up to social justice and community events and documenting those movements and things like that. Like, that's the stuff that really fires me up. So yeah, I think it's been this nice parallel with my personal journey and my photography journey, and yeah.
I have an idea about this, but why is it so important when we talk about like social justice movements and the fact that you want to be there to document it, to witness it, and to use your ability for that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I show up best with like my camera in my hand. You know, I think it's important to show up to these types of things just to be a body in the crowd. But if I can offer this extra thing, I feel like having that visual documentation of these social justice movements and the communities coming together to really use their voice for good, it deserves to be captured, and it deserves to spread far and wide. It's really about amplifying people's voices and stories and experiences and blowing it up to like the biggest it could be, you know.
What does a still do as opposed to video with this type of, for folks to look at things and to kind of take it all in? Like, what do you think the difference is there?
I mean, I can only speak to like what I see when I look at a photo, but like people relate to things differently. So some people relate to written word, some people relate to video, some people like can look at a photo, and like I just love, you know, to really capture a photo that that shows that energy, the passion in people's eyes and their faces, and like people coming together. Like, it's so special to me. Like, I love it so much. And yeah, if I can show up and use my skill and my, you know, camera to do that and to just have that extra piece of the puzzle, then yeah, I love doing that.
When we say, what do you want to feel when you look at your photos or when you're getting styled, how do each of you approach that for someone that you're working with, for the consults?
So for me, I have like an intake form when you book an appointment with me. And that intake form has everything from like, would you like to share your name and pronouns, to what you like about your hair right now, which I think always is like a pause for people, because often we immediately go to what we don't like.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes very hard to say what we do like about ourselves. And then everything then from like, you know, tell me what you're doing basically from like when you're getting in the shower to when you're getting out to getting to work or wherever you're going, to what you're using. And the whole thing for me, the first part just says, like, this is a little bit to get to know you. There's no judgment. It doesn't matter to me what you use or how you're doing it, as long as it's working for you. And if it's not working for you, I'd love to be able to workshop that with you. And for me, the idea that people actually answer quite differently when they're home in their own space, because like that's ultimate safety for many people in their own space. And then when they come to me, then we kind of review it together. And that's what I was talking about earlier, being able to watch people in that time. So less about the words that they're saying and more about how they're moving, reacting, showing me like what's working for them and what's feeling good about, like what is feeling good, how they're feeling good about themselves through this conversation. And therefore, I feel like, compiling the words, their movements, their reactions, all of the ways they show up to their appointment, all of that normally gives me like a lot of clues as to how we're going to work with their hair. And then like the last thing I actually do is if they have inspiration from a photo. A lot of people will lead with that when you come into appointment, but like my point is like not that you're aspiring to be this person, but like that could be inspiration for you, but like who are you first? And like what feels good for you? And quite honestly, there's like a lot of there's a lot of parallels or a lot of like intersection, I guess, between like queer and neurodiverse folks. So a lot of times there's like sensory issues and like what the capacity that you have day to day. Like when people talk about how many spoons you have at the beginning or the end of a day. And so sometimes for people like getting up in the morning and getting themselves out of bed and to their job, to school, to whatever they have to do, their capacity is very low. And so how do I help them still feel good about themselves when they're leaving the house, even if like their capacity is actually like quite low to be able to, style their hair or do these things. I talk a lot about unstyling. So it's mostly just about meeting the needs of you so that you can take care of your hair and yourself on a day-to-day basis in a way that feels good for you and works for you. So for me, all of those pieces are about representation because that's really who you are and how you function in your day-to-day life. And now let's just like get you feeling your best about how you already do it to be able to go out into the world.
Thinking about comfort is so interesting. Like we bring this show around to communities sometimes, and I find there's such a difference when you have folks like what you're doing now, right? It's coming in, sitting down, there's microphones, and there's cameras, and it's a very weird thing. So thank you for doing this. But sometimes when you go to communities, granted, we bring a camera and there are still microphones, but I find the comfort level for folks, if we're speaking in a space that they're used to, it's so much higher. And that's without like everything else that you were just describing for what you do, which sounds so fantastic. But just even that bit, I notice. And I'm just kind of like, oh, there's so much more value in having folks feel super comfortable when going through something, especially to get your hair. Like, because growing up, like stories, you'd hear stories of like the maybe things that didn't go the right way with a hairstyle.
Absolutely.
And you hear, but to have all this baked in the process, I think it can easily pave the way for so many more happy, nice feelings, especially if your cup's not completely full at the moment.
Absolutely.
And then what about yourself?
So, like pretty much everything Ali touched on.
Yeah.
Like consulting is huge in a number of different ways, like beyond the words that people use, the way that they present themselves, the way that they hold themselves is really big. And that can even extend to you behind the chair. Like I find one of the biggest like pressure alleviations at the immediate beginning of every appointment is I want to sit down. That just stance of standing over somebody and it's like you're waiting, like you're ready to go, like, all right, let's make this fast. Come on, we're rushing through it. But no, like just take a seat. We can take as long as we need to. We can take 20 minutes if you want to talk about your fringe for 20 minutes. Like if that's where we're at, I'm going to meet you there. And I think that consulting in a huge way allows you to meet somebody where they are. So you get to find out, like, for me, my capacity has definitely changed from month to month because I have fibromyalgia. So when I experience some downtimes, it's really, really hard for me to just even do the basics of washing my hair. Yeah. So it's totally understandable to extend a cleanse cycle and to show somebody how they can keep their hair and their scalp healthy in the meantime while still working within their boundaries or their perimeters.
Yeah, it's like a body language thing, an energy thing, an empathy, empathy, all of that kind of built in together for just like thinking of like how you're perceived when someone comes in, and then feed a little bit off of just the person in the moment for what like. Sometimes I don't know, you can just feel someone when they're in a room, like and like for a big range of energy from great to neutral to maybe having the worst type of day. You are listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today on the show, here's the question we're asking. What do you want to feel when you look at your photos or when you get your hair styled? The start of the show, it's around Project Power Back, which helps folks who are queer, trans, or have an otherwise underrepresented body or identity and want their photo taken. Today on the show, we speak with folks about why projects like this one, and there's some other similar ones, are so meaningful. And the underlying point for today's conversation and the projects we're talking about, it's the work that's being done builds collective community care for folks to feel heard, seen, represented for who they are. And it's the fact that this all matters. As you're listening to us, The Signal at cbc.ca for emails. The Signal line, if you want to leave us a message, 709-576-5260. Text us, 709-327-8206. Here with me in studio, we've got Tanya Heath, who is the person behind Project Powerback, Allie Pike, who is a stylist, and Emin Hayden, who is a natural texture specialist and hairstylist. Let's go to a guest we have on the phones right now. It is Sarah Murphy who joins us on the line. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Adam. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show. Say hi to the group here in the studio, or if they want to say hi to you, feel free.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Tell us about the group Fat Babes of NL.
Yeah, so Fat Babes of NL, it's a community group that provides a safe, diet-free space for all marginalized bodies.
How did it start?
Yeah, so Fat Babes of NL, it originally started back in 2021. Myself and one of the founding members, Claire Hickey, we were walking down Duckworth Street. There were our thinner friends walking probably 10 feet ahead of us, and we were, us and who are visibly fat, we were walking behind. And so a truck passed us by, past our friends without incident, and we had ice cream thrown at us, and it was hard to feel like it just wasn't, targeted specifically because of, our weight. And so my friend, local reporter, amazing person, Layla Bodwin, posted about it on Twitter, and we just heard so much feedback about this happening to other fat folks, whether it's, names hurled at them or whether it was, fruit thrown at them. And it's just like, we just realized that there was just such a need for this space within our community. So we founded, our founding members are myself, Claire, Adriana Harris, and Holland Fox, and we founded the group in July of 2021.
When you, I'm sorry that happened, but when you go through something like that and you think you know the reason, but then it gets put out, over social media, and then you get all this input of like, yeah, no, that happened to me, something similar. Is that a surprising thing, or is it just unfortunately not surprising because of just the way the world is?
It is and it isn't. It wasn't surprising, like the fact that it's happening to other people, but the fact that it's happened to so many other people, I think, is what really shocked us and just really, drove it home to us that, we need the space to talk about these things and also to, be around like-minded people and not just to talk about the doom and gloom, but to have fun with each other. Yeah. And so, it's just, this group has just been such a beautiful thing that's grown out of such a dark place. And I forgot to mention, we since added members Jenna Slaney, Caroline Powell, and Shama Elizabeth to our group, and we've just really grown since 2021. I can't believe we started the group almost 3 years ago.
How long did it take to realize that? Because you had, like you said, the reason for it was really this dark thing, but then you start this group. And it's a beautiful thing. Was it right away, or how long did it take you to realize, gosh, we've got something here that's really meaningful for us and others?
Yeah, we realized pretty much right away.
Yeah.
So, like, kind of the kind of focal point when we first started was we had these like park hangs, and we just didn't, invite anyone who exists in a fat or otherwise marginalized body to the park to hang out with us. And just hearing other people's perspectives and their stories, it just really hit home, just like how healing this group was and how much the community needed it.
Can you talk to me about challenging stereotypes and some of the reclamation around the word fat with the group?
Yeah, absolutely. So fat, first and foremost, is an adjective. Just like skinny, tall, short, they're all adjectives. And it's just important for us to normalize what we call the F word, fat, and take away the stigma from that. Because I think like what it is that being fat is seen as a bad thing, but being fat is not bad, and that's why fat is not a bad word in itself.
Now, talk to me about the intersection then with Tanya and how we're all kind of here today having this conversation.
Yes, Tanya is amazing. Tanya comes, she has been to 2 of our pool parties, and she's so lovely to work with. What we do at these pool parties is we have, along with pizza party and swimming, for all the folks who are there in, existing in their fat or marginalized bodies, we have Tanya come in and she does photo shoots with us. And honestly, they're one of the highlights of the party. And Tanya just makes us feel all so comfortable in our own skin. Like it's just amazing. And you can just like scroll through our Instagram page or scroll through our Facebook page and just see her beautiful photos, and just everyone just looks so happy. And on that note, we're also collaborating with Tanya on a 2025 Fat-Based pool party calendar, which is very exciting.
Excellent. And what event? You got events coming up as well?
We do. We have a park hang happening on June 22nd at Bannerman Park from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and it's just like really casual, hangout time. It's going to be really fun. And we also have a pool party, and Tanya's going to be there on July 6th. It's going to be $20 per person, or pay what you can. We have a limited amount of people that can come this year. It's just 24 this year. We've had bigger events in other years, but the limitations, unfortunately, we can only have 24 people. So if you're interested, we're going to start selling pool party tickets this Friday for our July 6th pool party. And we'll definitely have other events on the go this summer. So definitely, check out our Instagram, Fat Babes of NL. Check out our Facebook page, Fat Babes of NL, and we'll be posting there.
Sarah Murphy, thanks for taking time out of your day to make this happen for the chat. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Take care.
Cheers, Sarah. Sarah Murphy there from Fat Babes of NL. Tanya, can you weigh in now on just when you're invited, as you're doing the pool party pics? I know that it's, I've seen some of them, folks just having a great time. I was at a pool party, but talk to me about your perspective on this.
Yeah, obviously those were really kind words. Thank you, Sarah. I feel honored being invited into spaces where like getting your photo taken is so vulnerable, especially for people of marginalized communities, right? So it means a lot to me, and it says a lot when people invite me into these spaces. It means that there's the safety and trust there. It means that we've built that relationship, and it means that people are excited about getting their photo taken, and that they feel good about the photos that they get, and they feel good about who they see in those photos, which is always my goal. Yeah, so I'm just really honored, to share that space.
So how do you work with to have someone feel seen, right? To look at it. I've had tons of photos taken of me before. I'm like, I don't like how I look in this picture, and I don't feel like I've been seen at all here. To work with folks to make sure that they're, at the end of the day, they're like, yes, that is me. You see me. Like, how do you do that? Because that's not everyone can do that, and not every photographer can do that or does that.
Yeah, I think there are a few things. And this goes back to Ali and Emin's point too about like really it's building the relationship first of all. Yeah. So how will you feel safe, and how do you trust somebody that you don't know or you haven't talked to or you haven't had conversations with before? So that's a part of it. And it's not about saying, hey, what do you not like about yourself? What could we hide in this photo for you? Yeah. It's coming at it with a different perspective, right? It's what do you love about yourself, or what can we highlight in this? What do you want to feel? Who do you want to see in this, and how do we get there? What's the feeling that you want to kind of be shown shown in this photo, because it's going to be different for everybody, and getting there is different for everybody. So I think the approach to, taking people's photos literally is different for every single person. And it's just about talking and really creating as much choice and collaboration as possible when I work with people. Giving them as much information beforehand, collaborating on inspiration, whether it's photos or colors or moods or, yeah.
Yeah, and building on like you said, building on the positive, right? Not being like, hey, I got the old Photoshop machine all cranked up and good to go in the laser pointer. It's like, no, it's the opposite of that.
Yeah, it's not a highlight to the way I work at all. It's not removing this or hiding this. It's let's highlight the things that you love about yourself, whether it's, parts of your gender expression or your hair or, something that you want to bring into the photo. And I think also just being a queer person and having a trans partner and, being so involved in community and having queer and trans friends and, being a part of the Fat Babes photo shoots and this and that. It's just showing people that there's commonality there too. So we walk into a photo shoot together and there's things that we don't need to spend time talking about. We come with, the history or the knowledge and lived experience of being a queer person in today's society, knowing what trans people go through every day and what they need and don't need. How that's so powerful to walk in and not have to spend time talking about. So I think that's really powerful and impactful for the situation too.
Yeah, lived experience matters, right? It's an important thing to be able to. We've spent a lot of time recently talking about peer-to-peer support on the show. I mean, just Monday we did a mental health show, and we had someone in from LifeWise talking about peer-to-peer support. But I see it in so many other places so it can be a first responder talking to another first responder about trauma, and you can see how important that would be, as opposed to someone has never been a first responder. And in this case, an LGBTQ plus sense, having a photographer who already knows and is in the community, the comfort level right away, you can understand how it would be there.
Of course, yeah. And it's not to put down any, if a queer or trans person was to use a straight,
no, of course.
There are so many amazing photographers here, but it is just we could just skip that part of it. We have this common understanding, this common ground that we can skip past and focus on the really good stuff. How are we going to radiate joy? What brings you joy? Is it something about your, let's not focus on that negative stuff, and let's really bring out the joy, because joy, in something in my, in my Instagram bio, and something that I really like to say and live by is joy is an act of resistance, especially in our society that is really built to make people in marginalized community fail. So that's why community spaces, and that's why the work that all of these folks in the room today and Sarah on the line, that's why this work is so important and so powerful and so impactful, is really building those community spaces, because we need to be there for each other.
Yeah, and safe spaces filled with, everyone deserves to have a safe space filled with joy, right? This is a basic human thing that we all will reach out to. And I think if maybe you don't understand that, maybe you've had so many safe spaces around you, you can't recognize the fact that others don't have them.
Absolutely.
So then, if you're styling someone or taking their picture, and then afterwards, right? So you can you feel properly connected. You do all the before work and the conversation. When folks kind of look at you when they're done and they see themselves how they want to be seen, what's that like each time? You're smiling.
It doesn't ever get old.
No, of course not. Yeah, it must be just it's something you want to bottle, I would assume, because it's so great.
Yeah. So I think actually something that's interesting is before the last 5 to 6 years, I'll say that revealing the person to themselves, how did I do? Did I meet the expectation? Did I create the look you wanted? Was more so kind of what I was thinking. And now I think that there's less reveal. It's the person becomes revealed as I'm going.
Yeah, it's this whole process from start to finish of hello to goodbye.
Exactly. And often, little things I try and practice with consent. Even just once we finish the conversation, I'll often say is it okay if I brush your hair now? Or, okay, I'm going to ask these questions. Obviously they've come to sit in my chair. yes, I can touch them, but like my massage therapist or my physiotherapist still says, is it okay if I touch you here?
Right.
Because that's the idea. Like, consent is important, even if the person has pre-consented to sitting here. So when that all starts to begin, and that really struck me, I think in 2020, when we came back from lockdowns, the first person that I just like touched their shoulder and they kind of like winced almost, I thought, oh, like, we need to, like, dial this back. Like, we need to start asking to get back into people's spaces. And then I started to realize, like, how empowering that was for people just in general. Like, and so then before I start to cut their hair, then I would say something often now, like, okay, do you feel comfortable with the conversation we've had? Like, are we good to start going? And it's so amazing and also kind of sad sometimes to hear people say, like, oh, like, this is a better experience than I've had, like, ever before right now. And, like, we're only sitting down for the first, like, 15 minutes.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm used to, like, I don't know, a number 2 on the sides and a little bit off the top. It's like, zzz, and you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah, which, like, there's room for that, too.
Sure.
Like, that's fine. But, if you have had, like, ill experiences, then all of these things are really important. And so I think there's a lot less, like, reveal and more just like watching the person kind of come to life through the experience. And then for me, I will often say, like, I'm going to take the cape off now. I want you to take a look at everything. But, like, if there's anything you want to change, let's talk about it. Because it also then removes the pressure from them. I'm not saying, like, magic trick, ta-da, we're done. And then they're like, oh, no, like, I actually just want this a little bit, like, because there's like, very minute changes. There's different things that they could have, like, visualized that once it's on them, once there's something that's like they still want to talk about it. And so I think just like letting people know that, like, just because I've removed the cape at this time, it doesn't mean like this is it. Like, how do you feel? Okay, great. And so, yeah, I think that feeling is like, I actually get it now, like, through the whole appointment, as opposed to just like sort of this like nervousness as I work.
Yeah.
And then, like, now it's the reveal. What do you think? And, like, all of a sudden, it's also their responsibility to, like, praise me for what has happened, as opposed to it, like, being this, like, collaborative experience throughout the appointment.
Very cool. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that the feeling, like Ali said, like, it kind of can start from that first moment of the consult sometimes. Like, a lot of times, even just sitting down, you can see the composure in the person sitting across from you change. Because they're like, okay, we can take a second, we can breathe through this kind of thing. And then on the other side of it, I think that just having experience as a queer person, you can really relate to the happiness that you feel when somebody finally listens to you. And I think, like, that feeling, let their eyes light up, like, they relax, like, okay, I'm finally being heard. I'm not walking out with the same pixie cut as my mom for the 5th time. Like, it's a little bit lighter, and I take so much pride in that. It's so important to me, even, like, just existing in a space, just existing. Beyond education, beyond the community work, just being a trans person in a space cutting hair, like, that can be it,
Yeah.
I actually, one of my clients that I had at one of the quad pop-ups, it's really stuck with me for the last year or so, because it made me realize that it was the first trans man I'd ever met over the age of 30.
Right.
And that in itself was a pretty, like, world-shaking experience. And it's like, why don't we get past 30,
Yeah.
Because we don't exist in these spaces. And I think that just being there and being a voice is so important.
Yeah, decades of not existing in these spaces and then not making it beyond that, and now to meet someone who's older than 30. The progress thing? Is it progress?
I think so. Yeah. Like, I really do. I think I even see it in the younger generation. Like, I have 2 younger brothers. I've got a 16-year-old brother and a 13-year-old brother. And just the conversations that I can have with them are so different than what I grew up with 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I remember like one of the first gay couples being on Days of Our Lives, I think it was, and it being a conversation in the household. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like there are changes happening.
Oh, look, I'm of the age for like being when Ellen came out, right? I'm like, so that's my vintage, right?
Cool.
For that conversation there, and
Yeah.
then to see all the progress that's been made since then,
Yeah.
and for this story included.
Mm-hmm.
Feminist trauma-informed lens for taking pictures.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Yeah, this is a great segue actually, because there was a point that Emin said about how powerful it is for you to just sit down with the person you're cutting their hair and feeling that shift. And I feel like that kind of goes back to power structures, right? And decreasing that hierarchy between, I'm in the power position and you're the person getting the service. So when we sit down with people, or when we increase that choice, when we increase collaboration, when we come at it, as a team rather than this is what I'm providing you, I think that's so powerful and so necessary, especially within these spaces where we, marginalized people often get their power taken away by our oppressive systems that exist. So, which kind of goes back to the name of my project, Project Power Back.
Yeah,
that's
it's
exactly
everything.
That's what I want to give people their power back when it comes to even something as simple as getting their photo taken. But yeah, saying the terms feminist, trauma informed. My day job, I work at the St. John's Status of Women Council, and they're really rooted in the value of, providing feminist and trauma-informed care. And I really like to take that into, honestly, whatever I do, but especially into photography as well. And that really looks like things like what Emin was saying, things that Ali have said the whole time, like this whole conversation, the way we approach our work is feminist, is trauma-informed, consent. I don't touch people, I don't touch people's hair, without asking. I don't, fix people's clothing without asking. All of that relates back to power, in being in that power position, but coming at it through, a trauma-informed lens.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So if you want to know the definition for trauma-informed, listen to all the answers earlier on in this show for all the talking that's happened, because that's what it is for the approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important because we don't know what goes on in anybody's lives, and they could be coming to us in without much space or capacity. And coming at it through those types of lenses is really powerful and impactful, just to build that safety and trust too. Yeah.
Can I ask you, when you when you look at your camera, I'm sure you must have more than one at this point, but when you take a camera, too many. When you think of yourself at the beginning of everything with the, hey, this could be maybe a side hustle, and then everything else that happened. So what do you think of, like, if you take a beat and think about your camera or cameras when one's in your hand?
Wow, that's like a big one, Adam.
We only have like 2 minutes left for the answer.
Yeah, good. Okay, good warning. I mean, it's really transformational. It's big. Like what was I doing? Like there was no passion going into it. There was nothing going into what I was doing before, and now it's not about me anymore. I don't do it for it to be about me. It's really about the person in the photo, or people in the photo, the communities in the photo, and bringing that power back and telling these stories and sharing their experiences, and putting more queer and trans joy out into the world unapologetically too, which I think is important. Which I think is such a power move. Let's do that together. Yeah.
And this is, I told you folks before, this is where we hit pause for a second, because there's someone who's joining us who's going to be on the show next week. So as you're listening to this signal, Ivan White is on the line, chair of Indigenous Performing Arts NL. Ivan, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm really good over here on the West Coast. There's not really a lot of sun, but I mean, it's warm.
Hey, that's one up on the east here. It may have warmed up since I came inside today. What's happening Tuesday evening next week with your uncle?
Yeah, Tuesday, June 11th, my Uncle Calvin, Elder Dr. Calvin White, will be in discussion with his son, renowned artist Nelson White, about a discussion of Confederation's legacy for Indigenous peoples in Newfoundland and Labrador.
And where'd you say? And where can folks find out information on it and the location?
Sure, you can go to ipanl.ca to pick up tickets, and it'll be happening down at the Cochrane Center for Creativity and Performance with First Light.
Excellent. And also, and this is me promoting a show for next week because you're going to be on my show along with Elder Kelvin White. We're going to have a chat, and it's Wednesday of next week. So I just want to say thanks in advance for this, and folks, do tune into that show. And Ivan, thanks for coming on to give a little plug to everything and to help me preview a show a week out.
No worries, and I want to tie back to something that was said earlier in your show about community, and I think that's sort of like the purpose of IPA. We're meant to discover, unveil, reveal, revive stories about community, about Indigenous communities in this province.
And this is going to be part of the conversation next week. For June 11, Tuesday night, called No Indians Here at First Light Center for Performance and Creativity. And then and if you can't make it there, it's going to be a great conversation with myself, yourself, and your uncle, Elder White, on Wednesday. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers, buddy. All right, Ivan White. Saw him last year in Flat Bay when we took the show out there for Powwow. What's the look ahead for us here in studio today? What's happening? What do we got coming up? Are there any pop-ups happening? What else is going on?
Lots of stuff.
Yeah,
I know. It's
fill
like,
us in.
I know. It's trying to find a free weekend is probably easier to tell you about than all the stuff we have on the go. But we've got La Vanya this month. Actually, that's this weekend. We're going to be popping up with Pay What You Can haircuts there. So that'll be at Eastern Edge downtown. We're also, Allie's taking part in a Goldwell hair show in a couple weeks, and then we're doing a class as well with one of the stylists from Goldwell. And next month we're looking at Funky Swap,
which is a trade-only market that happens in Bannerman Park. So no money exchanged. There's a lot of like physical trade, plants and craft and art and all sorts of different things. And then obviously services from us, which is the trade-only part, which is the best part of it all. Realistically, it's kind of where our pop-ups really started to flourish.
Yeah, that was our first one ever. And it was like, okay, how do we keep doing this?
Yeah. And then we have the Holdfast Half Ham.
Yep.
July 20th.
Yep. And we've got Port Rexton.
Pride event. All of our pop-ups are pay what you can.
Why is that so important, pay what you can, by the way? I mean, I can understand, but it's nice to hear the explanation.
Sure. In marginalized communities, it often also leads to financial insecurity for a lot of folks. Yeah. And so that's a barrier we'd like to take away or at least reduce. And so to have pay what you can means that the money shouldn't be a barrier. Truly, we don't offer sliding scale for these events. It is just if whatever you have to give us to come and get your haircut, then that's good for us. And sometimes it's not just about people who can't pay or can't pay a lot to come. If you are someone who would like to come and donate to cover somebody else, like that's also an important part. So we found that is a big piece to reducing like another barrier.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we do a lot of walk-ups as well. Because even the pre-booking can cause anxiety, I feel like, for some folks. It's like, oh, now I have to fill out a form. Oh, my God. And then, So it's like, no, just walk up, ask if we have time today, and we'll fit you in.
And then we'll have another quadrangle event at the end of the summer. They happen every 2 weeks. It's Quadrangle Self-Care Sunday. It happens at the Quadrangle Community Center and Resource Center. And that also, it's normally Emin and I, stylist Pat Squires, and then another holistic practitioner, either RMT, acupuncture, Reiki, other things that if you don't have insurance or other ways of paying, then you can also pay what you can for those as well.
Emin, you were not lying. There was a lot going on.
Oh, yeah. I was doing the schedule last night, so it's just like boggling in my brain right now as we're talking about it.
Tanya, there's under a minute left this time.
Okay.
Any final thoughts for today?
Yeah. If I could, I'd love to read something that came from a conversation with somebody that we've all worked with, I think,
yes,
Ari. And I think it is a perfect end to this conversation, if I may.
Go ahead.
And I did get their consent to read this. So they said, we all know that creating community is no small thing. Queer folk folks of all ages all express deep longing for a greater sense of community. It's something every last one of us struggles with. We see systems failing almost everyone, and I really don't believe those systems are fixable because they were designed to fail most marginalized people. I feel strongly that caring for each other in community is where our energy belongs. I think experiencing the impacts of events like A Happy Place, which is a free event that we all collaborated on recently, and others like it really solidified my conviction that this is the way forward. These aren't just a haircut and a photo things. It really is a glimpse into what's possible.
And we'll leave it there. Thanks for this.
Thank you so
for having
much.
us.
Yeah,
All right.
It was great.
Tanya Heath, Allie Pike, Em and Hayden. Thank you. That is it for today's show. Thank you, folks, for listening. We pop all the shows, most of the shows recently up on YouTube, so do find it there later at CBCNL's YouTube page. The Signal has a playlist. Tomorrow, here's a question for you. How much do politicians make, and what's the cost of being in politics? Those are the questions we're asking. And that second question, not necessarily about money. We will dig into both of them tomorrow here on The Signal. Don't miss it. Until then, thanks for listening, folks.